In this video, I'm going to show you 6 ways to monetize a podcast and YouTube channel. And I bet that the last one, you've never heard about it before. So this is taken from my online course called Your First 5 Episodes in 6 Weeks, where I take people on a journey to launch their first podcast. And the last one is the one that you can use even if you have 0 subscribers. Enjoy. So there is a part where it's just long term, it's branding. And so that's why here we lead with that. But there are ways to monetize more directly a podcast. So I want to share about the main ones. And it almost goes from the most obvious to the least obvious. But the most obvious is almost the ones I recommend the least. And it will make sense as we go through it. So the first one is get paid for views. So if you're on YouTube, for example, you can monetize your channel. So I monetize my channel, The Light Leaders. It has 3.6 thousand subscribers. I think I make something like $30 a month. So if you want to make really good money with your YouTube channel, you need millions of subscribers, or at least hundreds of thousands of views on your videos to make really good income. And I'm following also other channels that, they have multi-million coaching businesses, and their YouTube channels get hundreds of thousands of views, and they make like 10K a month. So it's like, it's very rare the people who make really good money from YouTube. And in general, you're just getting paid for views. It's a nice bonus, like I take it, but I wouldn't aim for that. Now we have area number 2. I wouldn't aim for that. And anyway, if you needed to be trained for that, I'm not the right person, because as I told you, I make like $30 a month with my YouTube. Now, get sponsored. And that's easier if you have a niche. So what I mean by get sponsored is find a brand that's going to pay you to be advertised on the podcast. So this is going to be more attractive if you're doing something where the sponsor will potentially get like high value customers. So let's say if you have an e-commerce podcast, maybe Spotify, or like a competitor of not Spotify, Shopify, like a e-commerce website brand that would be a competitor of Shopify, could be interested to sponsor your show, because maybe if you have even a few hundred views, all these views are like their potential audience. I believe that's what Joe Rogan does with AG1, and there's a lot of big podcasts that do that. So similarly here, it's more for like bigger podcasts. You get paid more. So if I had a huge podcast, I would go more for sponsorship than trying to just get the views. I mean, I would get both, but rely more on this one. And a lot of big podcasts, they do that. Hey, this podcast is sponsored by AG1. Check out the page. Cool. But hard to do if you don't have a huge audience. Then we go to number 3, which is using affiliates or MLM. This is actually what Jillian Berry is doing too with her channel. She's selling juicer, and I don't know if the company Nama Juicer is paying her something fixed. Maybe they do, but I would assume most of her income comes from the referral commissions. So she gives a link with $55 off the juicer. People click the link, and every time someone buys a juicer, she gets a commission. I've put a link to Riverside in some of my episodes. So if people join Riverside when I talk about making a podcast, where I get a commission from it. So this is affiliate. And MLM is affiliate on several levels. So basically, if there's products that you use, that you love, that you're referring to as business, you can include that in the podcast, and then you make commissions. So either one level commission on affiliate products, or multi-level commission on multi-level marketing. That's what I did recently. I had a podcast with my friend Thomas, who's a big leader in a MLM company called Corsair. They recycle plastic. So very aligned because they recycle a lot of plastic, which is very needed, very aligned with the light leaders, and a really great business model. So I'm only on the side part of it. I'm not doing it full on like him, but I did an episode on it, and I had a lot of people wanting to buy the plastic credits, and some people wanting to join it as a brand ambassador. So I could leverage my podcast to easily get leads for that MLM that I'm part of. So that's another possibility. Then number 4 is leverage the guest's offer as affiliate. So you could have an affiliate like Gillian Berry. She's a lot of her episodes. She'll promote buy the juicer, get a discount. You buy a juicer, you get a discount. You use her link, she gets a commission. Everyone's happy. So you can do that, and that's like every episode it'll be the same, and it's simple. But especially when you're small, so the top ones here, it almost goes from the most scalable to the most smart when you're small. And so this is leverage the guest offer as an affiliate. So I've done that sometimes. If I think this works really well if you really love what your guest has to offer, ideally even if you've experienced it. So for example, when I have my business coach on the podcast, and is someone I would want to refer and recommend to all the people who listen to the podcast, well, it can't hurt. I will ask him, hey, if people come from me, can I get a referral commission? And so then I do a podcast, and maybe he gets a few hundred views, but if a few of those people end up working with my business coach, I'm going to make potentially good money from it. So this will only work with people you really trust and you're close to. Like, for example, if you have hundreds of guests, what are the chances that 3 months later they'll come back and say, hey, that person came from you? So you don't have to do that with everyone, but if you have a few key people that you like to have on the podcast, maybe you have them several times on the podcast and you have a clear agreement with them. When people join, I get a 15% commission on whatever they buy. I think that's a good deal, and that's fair because you gave the spotlight to that person and you did the advertising work. Usually 10 to 20% can be a good idea. It depends. If they work one-on-one and it's a really high ticket thing, maybe it's only 10%. If it's an online program, it could be 50%, honestly. Yeah, so this leverage the guest offer as an affiliate. If you know someone, you love what they're doing, they offer, you want to promote it, a way to do that is to have them on the podcast and promote that. And then number 5, you have your sell your own products and services. So as a lot of you are coaches, for example, including myself, well, that's a most direct pathway. And here, basically, when you do an episode, you can say things like, hey, by the way, I'm a podcast coach, and if you have a podcast in you and you feel you want to share your message with the world too, I would love to help you. Just get in touch. And then you create a call to action. So send me a DM on Instagram with the word podcast. That's like a simple thing. I won't go into complicated funnels here. As you grow, you might have like freebies and build your email list and book a sales call and all this. But I recommend to start just with like DM, send a DM. Once you get overwhelmed with all the DMs, you get hundreds of DMs a day, then you can do a qualification process with the funnel. That's what I recommend. So here, when you focus on this, you can adjust the content, obviously. So do content that's more relevant to your specific audience to whom you want to sell the products or the services. And then I like to plug it in as we talk about it genuinely in the podcast. Some people do recordings, but I find it sounds a bit off. I prefer to just have a reminder in the middle of my podcast to be like, hey, by the way, as you're still watching this, and we just talked about this, we just talked about going big in 2025 with my guest here. Well, if going big means having a podcast to you, I'd love to have a chat. I give free sessions to conscious leaders who want to start a podcast. Just send me a DM with the word podcast and go back to the episode. I find that works better than having a recorded thing, in my opinion. And then, yeah, adjusting the content could be the topics, obviously, around your expertise. Could be also having your clients, for example. If you're a coach, there's a lady called Kim Amani. She does that really well. But a lot of coaches do it. They'll have their clients on the podcast talking about their transformation. So I don't know if you're a relationship coach and you're helping women find the man of your dreams, and you're interviewing your client about the process of how working with you helped her find the client, the not the client, the man of her dreams, and make it a podcast, not just a testimonial. Like she's going to share something entertaining and interesting about how she found her husband, but she's a client of yours and you helped her. Of course, that's going to be very targeted for this. So you might have only a few hundred views, maybe less than that, but maybe all these people will be the perfect clients for your services and might end up being better than having a bigger episode on something more general. Like having clients can be really good for this. So this is more thinking outside the box. And this one is even more thinking outside the box. Enroll your guest. So you could have a strategy where it's not even that you make a podcast with someone and the viewer is an ideal client, is going to hire your services. It could be that your guest is going to hire your services. And this could work especially well if you had like high-end services to people that are hard to reach. So let's say, imagine having a sales software for CEOs. And I do, and my podcast is I interview CEOs about the sales process. Well, then this, if I go to a CEO with a sales software and I go like, "Hey, CEO, started this sales software. It's going to be amazing because we have this feature and this. It's going to be in the inbox," and they're bombarded with people wanting to sell them their services, and you won't have an answer. However, if you go like, I interview CEOs on how they scale their businesses, much more likely to get answers. Like I'm sure a lot of those CEOs are like, maybe they've never been on a podcast and they're like, whoa, great. I get to talk about my experience as a CEO on a podcast. People love to be interviewed, guys. People love that. And so then you could genuinely have a good chat with them, but you create a connection where, it could be like, oh, and what are your challenges with sales? And then after that conversation could be like, well, I've started a software that actually helps with this specifically. Would you like to have a follow-up conversation? And then your podcast becomes a way to actually talk to your ideal clients in a way that, you've gone deep together, you spent some time, you gave a service to them. And of course, the listeners of the podcast are also going to be a very good match. So these are little different strategies, but this is like outside the box. But I'm actually testing it out very soon with a new podcast I'm starting called My Podcast Debut, where I interview people who start a podcast, and that gets me into conversations with people who want to start a podcast. So it's quite smart, I think. So yeah, you can tweak your strategy based on your goals. What's your goals right now? Do you want to scale your coaching business? Well, then it's probably these ones. Are you already super wealthy and you just want to increase your influence? Then you probably more want to get paid. Like look at different strategies that where the priority is on the views and the content, and don't really care so much about the monetization. Yeah. So I hope that's helpful, and much love.